Senator Amy Klobuchar is the latest 2020 Democrat to qualify for the November primary debate. A new Quinnipiac poll released today helped her meet the polling qualification. She joins the 8 other candidates who have already qualified, including frontrunners Joe Biden, Elizabeth Warren, and Bernie Sanders. Other candidates have until November 13th to reach the polling and donor minimums to qualify for the debate.
Here now, Caitlin Conan, political director at CBS News. Caitlin, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
That same Quinnipiac poll that Jenna just mentioned places Elizabeth Warren ahead of Joe Biden, 28 to 21%. It's the 4th consecutive Quinnipiac poll where she's ahead of Biden. Is this now saying that Elizabeth Warren is the undisputed Democratic frontrunner?
Well, you know, it's unquestionable that she's had a really strong few months, as you mentioned, both in the polling and fundraising. I think what we've seen is that there's now 2 clear lanes that have established. One is the more progressive wing of the party, which Senator Warren and Senator Sanders, they're kind of attracting the same sorts of voters. But then you also have the moderate lane, which so far former Vice President Joe Biden has been in the lead, but there's a bunch of candidates who are hoping that if he dips at all, they can fill that void. And so you see Mayor Pete Buttigieg, who was also doing better in the polls. He was second in an Iowa State poll today in the state, which is a jump for him. Yeah, and he did well in the Quinnipiac poll this morning as well. And as you mentioned, Senator Amy Klobuchar is someone who wants to fill that space and thinks that there is potentially an opening to take those voters from Biden.
Well, one candidate who's dropping out is Congressman Tim Ryan from Ohio. Given the stricter qualifications to get on the stage, when do you expect the field to really narrow, and when will we get a good idea of who the actual candidate to take on Donald Trump might be?
Well, I think one thing to say is that candidates don't decide to drop out because they decide, you know what, I don't think I could be president after all. They run out of money, and they need the money to keep going. So I think we'll probably see over the course of the next few months, as we head into the early states next year, candidates who have the fundraising and the money that it takes to hire staff, to pay for travel, to be able to pay for TV and do all the things that they need to do to be able to get their message out so that people want to vote for them.
Is that going to be a problem for Joe Biden? He's trailing far, far behind some of these others like Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders.
Well, you know, right before I walked in here today, the Biden campaign signaled that they're open to having some super PAC support Biden. So I think that says a lot. You know, they are behind Senator Sanders and Warren, and it is an important and crucial element to running a campaign.
To the impeachment inquiry on Capitol Hill, Lindsey Graham is introducing a non-binding Senate resolution condemning what he calls a closed-door, illegitimate impeachment inquiry by the House Democrats. If passed, what will that resolution do?
Well, I think the main thing to focus on here is just the messaging of Republicans right now. And you'll notice that a lot of them are criticizing the process of this as opposed to defending what the president may or may not have done. And one thing that I'm also focused on in terms of the calendar is what does this mean for a lot of the Senate Democrats who are running for president? Because with the timing of this, if the trial comes to the Senate and there is a vote to impeach in the House,
and they're in the official campaign cycle.
Exactly. That could mean that come January or February, potentially you could have Warren, Sanders, Harris, Klobuchar, Booker all sitting in a trial where they can't speak, while Mayor Pete Buttigieg and Vice President Biden are barnstorming the early states. So that's something to keep an eye on as well.
Just a few seconds left, but today we saw a rare moment on Capitol Hill. We saw Mark Meadows eulogizing his friend, Elijah Cummings. What does this say about just where we are in just politics in Washington?
Well, I think things are really polarized right now, so it is nice that at moments like these that politicians can come together and show that they have friendships on both sides of the aisle. And he was a giant, obviously, so it was a nice thing to see.
Caitlin, we always appreciate having you here. Thank you so much for being here. And